Meghan Markle has an extreme case of main character syndrome, basically a situation where somebody thinks they are the main player, the protagonist in the story of their lives and the lives of everyone around them.
David Foster and Catherine McPhee in Canada for their charity gala was not surprisingly a complete mess for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Meghan, look at this. She just can't help directing traffic on a red carpet, can she? When a picture tells the real story, the Fosters cannot stand Meghan and Harry.
Roughly 90 seconds. That is about how long Meghan Markle lasted on that carpet before a 76-year-old man seemed to look right past her, ignore the hand she had extended, and keep walking, leaving her with a smile that had nowhere to land. She had arrived like she was set to run the whole evening, and within a minute of stepping out of the car, she was already telling the host of the charity gala where to stand.
I just get the sense of Meghan Markle just tries to do whatever she can to bring attention to herself and act like it's just so casual, but she's still attempting to do it. She also is still attempting to direct people because, again, this is a film production of her life, guys. So she needs to direct people as to where to stand because apparently a producer who is in his 70s and has been in the entertainment industry for years and years, he apparently doesn't know how to stand on the red carpet. He needs Meghan Markle to direct him because she's the ultimate director.
A man with 16 Grammys, 4 decades on red carpets, and his own name on the building, moved like he was not interested in being steered by anyone. According to online chatter, he did not offer a greeting, a warm smile, or even a glance. He simply passed by the outstretched hand, took his place, and carried on with what many described as the final night of his life's work, as if she were not standing there at all.
Meghan Markle chose to do the unthinkable on the red carpet. When I tell you that this woman loves to burn bridges because she had nothing to lose, she knows she's not coming back because David Foster is not doing these events anymore. This is the 40th year he's done this.
Watch her face in that half second afterward. That is the part people online keep circling back to, the moment her team would probably wish could just disappear from the internet. For once, on camera, in front of a room where seats were said to cost $5,000 each, someone simply did not play along, and Meghan Markle seemed left with no clear idea what to do with her hands. And that is exactly why the clip took off so fast. Online, people were not just replaying the moment, they were reading into it, frame by frame, trying to decide whether this was simple awkwardness or a very public sign that the energy in the room was not what it was supposed to be. Some viewers said the whole exchange looked cold, while others argued it was just a busy red carpet and nothing more. Either way, the reaction said a lot, because once a moment like that lands on camera, it stops being about one person and becomes about the image around them. For Meghan, the silence in that instant seemed to do more talking than any introduction could have, and that is what kept people focused on it long after the carpet moved on.
When will she learn? She just needs to go and stand and smile and avoid this awkwardness in front of banks of cameras.
And that is the version the wires ran. Here is the version people in the room actually saw. Victoria, British Columbia, Friday night, purple carpet, black tie, $5,000 a seat, and $20,000 if you wanted the full weekend package. For 40 years, one man had been doing charity work for families whose young people are waiting on transplants. In his hometown, for what was described as his final gala, the event was sold out. Everyone who had already paid was inside and seated when 2 people who had not been announced came onto the carpet. And yes, that detail is exactly what caught attention.
As she has been for the last 10 years. And unfortunately, performances like this are becoming more and more grating on the public day after day. And Meghan Markle would be so much better served to not wear a toga that looks like she has a dirty diaper and instead actually embrace her vain, vapid, and shallowness.
When have those two ever stepped into a room without drawing attention? And there is a detail about that night that a lot of mainstream coverage seemed to skate right past. According to the way people online described it, she was not there just to attend that gala. She seemed to be acting like one of the people behind it. Within minutes, she was arranging the group for photos, filming herself walking through a corridor of musicians, pulling Harry into the frame, laughing toward the camera, and narrating her own entrance. She stayed in the photo line well past the point where most guests would smile, offer a quick greeting, and move along.
Harry's awkward smile really said it all. It's like he's looking very unhappy. Look at that. Then he realizes, oh gosh, she is recording me again. I better smile.
A guest is supposed to show up, support the night, and keep the focus on the cause. Instead, she seemed to spend the evening chasing moments, while the man whose name was tied to the foundation was left waiting for his own spotlight. And then there was the whisper making the rounds in Canada that she had asked to be left alone on that carpet, alone, at someone else's 40th anniversary event. That detail, if true, would say plenty. Every second of that footage gives off the impression of someone who had been led to believe the room was hers. It was not, and she was about to realize that very quickly. And that is why the backlash did not just fade out after the clip ended. People online kept circling back to the same question, whether the awkwardness was accidental or whether it reflected a bigger problem with how the night was being handled. A few viewers said the whole thing felt less like a warm charity appearance and more like a tense entrance that never quite settled down. Others pushed back, saying the carpet can get crowded, the timing can get messy, and a short moment on camera does not tell the full story. Still, once the footage started spreading, the reaction became part of the story itself. It was no longer just about who greeted whom. It was about the way the moment looked to everyone watching from home. And in celebrity coverage, that kind of first impression can hang around far longer than the event itself.
I have to be honest, like, the imagery that Meghan chose to put out, I don't think she realizes that we just totally see through her act now, like this with the sexy bagpipe troupe.
Oh my God.
This is great. So where mine?
First, there is the clip that has the whole internet laughing. In it, she walks down a corridor lined with pipers and drummers, men in formal dress who have performed for actual heads of state, and she moves along that line, giggling. That laugh, the one that seems to arrive just a second late every time and never quite reaches her eyes, turns toward the room and says her husband loves bagpipes. Her husband is standing only a couple of feet away, with a mouth of his own. He is right there, close enough to say it himself. He could have handled that line in a second, which is exactly why so many viewers found the moment awkward and a little too performative. The clip did not just feel staged, it is the kind of thing people online kept replaying because it looked so strangely unnecessary.
My husband loves bagpipes. And you gotta wonder, who is this poor soul forced to carry this camera and film her giggling at herself, her horrible hairstyle here, and her dirty diaper toga? Who is in charge of filming this? Every time Meghan laughs, I just can't help but think of a really bad actress attempting to laugh. Laughing authentically is harder than crying. And I kind of believe that in a way, because you can definitely look fake laughing. Crying might be a little bit easier to pull off because you just have to bring the emotion. But laughter is a bit hard, and Meghan looks like she's acting badly.
This is the one with the Scottish heritage, the Balmoral Summers, and the regiment, and she seems to take the line right out of his hands and deliver it herself, in the third person, to a room full of strangers, almost like she is narrating a film about her own life while everyone else has been placed in the background. And someone was even walking backward down that corridor to capture it on camera. Think about that for a second. A person, working the event, moving backward with a camera, catching every laugh and every glance.
Meghan even went out of her way to wear a Canadian designer for her gown. And they're very much trying to, again, he's trying to do that buddy-buddy thing with the bagpipers. They're just very much trying to emulate this life that they left. And everything looks increasingly strained because they look ridiculous. They're acting ridiculous. They left. They chose to leave. And there are perfectly legitimate ways for them to have somewhat of a public profile, but not constantly looking like they're trying to recreate what they lost. But they can't do it.
This is the couple that took privacy disputes all the way through Fleet Street. After 6 years of lawyers, 6 years of speeches about intrusion, and all the noise around being watched too closely, people online could not help pointing out the irony. The woman still seemed unable to move from the car to the table without someone on staff filming nearly every step. Strange timing, some viewers said. Then Harry started speaking to the pipers himself, looking genuinely engaged and clearly interested, facing them and having his own conversation, and there she is, lingering right behind his shoulder, still caught in the incident, almost waiting for the frame to swing back her way. That was the part people kept reading into. On camera, it gave off the impression of, how dare he? This was supposed to be about me. And that is exactly why the clip kept catching attention after the event was already over. For some viewers, it was not just a brief, awkward exchange. It became part of a bigger pattern people online were already talking about, where every small gesture gets read as a message. The reaction was less about one bad angle and more about how the whole moment seemed to invite commentary from the start. What made it stick was the contrast. Harry appeared to be in his own conversation, clearly focused on the people in front of him, while she remained just slightly off to the side, still in frame, still drawing attention back to her. To critics, that split said a lot about the dynamic on display. To supporters, it was probably just another overanalyzed public moment that got blown up once the internet got hold of it. Either way, the clip kept spreading because people could not agree on what they were actually seeing, and that disagreement gave the moment a life of its own.
How tacky. Not bidding for the gala, not helping towards fundraising, but filming your place sittings for social media content. I swear she's mentally stuck at the age of 12, just like Harry. And I mean, I felt this, look at this, when she was awkwardly dancing and actually hollering during an Adam Levine performance, just making sure everyone's actually watching her. But no one was watching her.
It seemed to get even more awkward once they were inside. One thing Meghan Markle, at least in the way online critics described it, appears to struggle with is a room that is no longer focused on her. So when Adam Levine got up to perform, Meghan Markle did what she is often said to do. She stood up and started dancing, and there was no dance floor. This was a seated black-tie dinner right in front of the stage, and according to viewers online, she ended up blocking the sightline of the people sitting behind her, people who had paid $5,000 a seat to see the performance, not the back of her head.
David Foster and Catherine knew if that they invited Harry and Meghan, they would get more headlines, and that's what they wanted, and that's what they got, and that's all they cared about. Harry and Meghan have nothing to offer except for that royal piece, and they exploit it quite a bit, but it has a limited bandwidth, and they're just there for kind of the shock value. They're not really there because anybody actually them there. And the performance with the bagpipers is just the worst example of that.
That little shimmy, the small seal clap, and the way she kept glancing around to see who was watching, all of it did not go unnoticed. And Harry, honestly, looked like a man who was being handed his own verdict in real time. A lot of viewers who saw the clip seemed to land on the same takeaway, and thousands of them repeated the same 3 words: he told her to sit down. And there was more to it than just that one reaction. Footage from the table appears to show her leaning toward him again and again, encouraging him to get up, get up, get up. Yet this time, according to what people online were pointing out, he stayed seated and did not budge at all.
If you pay close attention here, you will hear her shouting and screaming. But this is really interesting because people were saying that she was arguing with Harry. Nobody was paying attention to them. They were on the side table. They were not in the middle of the they were not in the main table, in the center table. They were on the side. And nobody was paying attention to Meghan Markle. And we know that Meghan Markle can't live without attention. All the cameras need to be on her. And she was arguing with Harry, asking him to get up and sing, to make a scene,
Let that sink in. According to the way online viewers read the moment, he would rather seem rude in front of a room full of donors than get up and join what they saw as her little performance. Some critics even said the usually compliant husband finally reached his limit, and it was over a quick dance at a young people's charity event. And that is why the reaction kept growing after the moment had already passed. Online, people were not just replaying a short clip, they were using it to argue about body language, timing, and who seemed to be leading the room. For critics, the issue was not one single gesture, it was the way the entire scene was interpreted as a public mismatch in energy and attention. Supporters pushed back, saying the footage was being read far too harshly and that a crowded charity event can make anyone look awkward for a few seconds. But once a clip gets that kind of traction, every small movement starts getting picked apart. A glance, a pause, even where someone is standing, can suddenly be treated like a statement. That is exactly what happened here. The conversation kept shifting away from the event itself and toward what viewers believed the moment said about the couple, their dynamic, and how they handle attention when the spotlight is not lining up the way they want.
This is just another example in a long line of examples of Meghan Markle's horrible ability as a creative and producer.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the whole promotional campaign was super bad.
Now back to the carpet, and those 90 seconds, because they had already had their moment. That is the part people keep overlooking. The cameras had caught the arrival, the outfit had been photographed, and the presence had already been established. At that point, most guests would usually move along the line and let the hosts step in for their own clean incident. Instead, they stayed put, and the host and his wife had to come over and stand with them because the pair did not clear the frame. For one night in 40 years, some viewers felt the man was entitled to have that carpet to himself.
Meghan's problem is that she has this small, minor group of people who adore her and think she walks on water. And then the rest of the public is like, you're lying. You're not being real here. And she just can't help herself. She has zero self-awareness.
And then the arm comes out, stretched across and slightly downward, pointing to a spot on the floor, not a wave and not some lingering handshake, despite what a few outlets were suggesting. Any woman who has spent time at award nights knows that gesture instantly. It is the move of the person standing off to the side of the stage, quietly showing the winner where to place her feet. In that reading, she is not welcoming, she is guiding the scene, managing the moment, and making sure everything lands exactly where she wants it to.
I think she genuinely thinks we don't see through it at this point, but there is no more fake person in the world than Meghan Markle. She looks incredibly, and the more she tries to emulate warmth, the less you believe in. And of course, David Foster has been in the entertainment industry for years. I'm sure he knows how to stand on a red carpet. Meghan Markle doesn't need to help him.
According to the way some viewers read the moment, she seemed to be calling the shots at someone else's farewell, and people online thought that was a bold move. But the host of the evening appears to walk right past the gesture, with no greeting, no glance, no extra warmth, and no pause for the polished little moment some had expected. He moves beyond the hand that was still hanging there, finds his own spot, and stands there with what the internet has now started describing as visible frustration. And then she starts adjusting her dress. That is the detail viewers keep pointing to. Watch her hands. She keeps smoothing the fabric, tugging at it and resetting her stance, almost like she is trying to recover the rhythm in real time. That is what made the clip stick with people, because to online viewers it did not read as a random fidget, it read as a visible reset after the moment did not land the way it may have been expected to. And once that kind of reaction starts, the internet fills in the blanks fast. Some people saw confidence, others saw irritation. A few argued that the entire exchange looked awkward only because the cameras caught it at the exact wrong second, when everyone was already trying to move on. But that is the nature of these viral charity moments. One small pause can suddenly carry far more meaning than anyone in the room probably intended. So the focus shifts again, not to the gala itself, but to the body language, the missed cue, and the way the scene seemed to hang in the air long after the carpet was supposed to be over.
And there was lots of other cringe connected to this event, including the copying of William and Catherine's fashion. As The Veil Between Us pointed out, well, it appears that Zarkle isn't the only one cosplaying a member of the royal family. Zarkle wore a cape dress like Princess Catherine, and Harry wore a velvet jacket like Prince William. How pathetic are these two?
The moment she seemed to realize the room was not landing the way she had hoped, her hands went straight to the fabric, and online viewers immediately compared it to the time William kept adjusting his scarf for 11 seconds rather than turn and speak to her. That comparison has been making the rounds again because people online have now framed her as being publicly brushed off on camera by a Prince of Wales and by a Canadian record producer. Different men, different settings, and, according to critics, the same awkward outcome. But there is one detail almost nobody covering this has really emphasized. That arm gesture is not new. Viewers say she has done it before.
Prince Harry quits the charity that he set up in honor of his mother in a massive win for Dr. Sophie Chandoka, a woke black woman who finally had enough with the bullying, with the relentless, inappropriate pursuits from both the Duke and his awful wife, Meghan Markle.
And the last woman who followed that cue, at least according to how some viewers described it online, was said to have lost her moment completely. That scene dates back to Florida about 2 years ago at a polo match tied to Harry's own charity, Senta Ballet. The organization was founded when he was 21, together with the Prince of Lesotho, in memory of both of their mothers, and it supports young people living with HIV. During the trophy presentation, Harry was standing on the field, and beside him was the chairwoman of the charity, Dr. Sophie Chandoka, who was born in Harare, works as a corporate finance lawyer, and was listed in the late Queen's honors with an MBE.
To be honest, it's a last resort. Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organization, and this went on for months. It went on for months through bullying, harassment. I have documentation.
Now, of course, Harry is trying to present himself the victim of all of this.
And then Meghan arrives, and that arm comes out again. According to the way some viewers interpreted the moment, she appeared to signal where she would have preferred that woman to stand, not beside Harry, thank you, but closer to her instead. In the clip, the charity chairwoman seems to move under the trophy and across the front of the donors, before ending up where a guest had seemingly indicated she should go. And that is why people keep circling back to it, because once viewers think they spot that same hand signal again, they start connecting moments that may or may not even belong together. To some, it looks like a pattern of trying to direct the room. To others, it is just a split-second adjustment that got blown way out of proportion online. Either way, the clip gave critics another point to latch onto, and the discussion quickly moved from a simple gala appearance to whether these public moments always seem to turn into awkward little power struggles on camera. That is also what makes the reactions so sticky. It is not just about one person standing in one place, it is about how a tiny gesture can shift the whole mood of a scene, at least in the eyes of viewers watching from home. And once that happens, the internet does what it always does. It replays, compares, and starts reading intention into every movement, whether the original moment really supported that much meaning or not.
So I want to show you what happened on stage, because it's not Dr. Sophie Chandoka who causes an issue, it is Meghan Markle.
Thank you very much, Drew Tucker, for putting on such a great day here at Paradise Power Cup. Again, a big thanks to all those who provided horses.
You know, why not just let the lady stand where she wanted to stand? Is that so bad? Because Meghan is always trying to control the narrative.
Then, according to how the story has been circulating online, someone in Montecito apparently wanted the clip cleaned up, and a request was passed through Harry's side. The ask was to put out a public statement and support the Duchess, but she reportedly declined. In her words, she said she was not going to set a precedent by which the charity became an extension of the Sussex PR machine.
It's going to really affect their fundraising. It's going to affect the branding. And these children are going to be the ones who are going to pay the price for that, I believe.
And then, according to her account, a message came through from the prince himself, asking, "Explain yourself." Some of the people who saw the exchange reportedly described it in 2 words, saying, "That's unpleasant, imperious." 11 months later, the charity was said to be in turmoil, with trustees stepping away and both royal patrons gone, while she claimed there had been allegations of harassment and bullying on a large scale, all playing out in front of cameras across Britain. Then, this March, his own charity reportedly took him to the High Court over the matter. His grandmother's honors list still carried that woman's name, while his wife pointed toward the floor.
Sussexes only will talk to people who repeat their own narrative.
Yes.
And who they can control. So the idea that you could get the truth from the Sussexes is contradiction.
So why does someone like that keep showing up at other people's charity events in the first place? Tom Bauer has spent 4 years and 2 books trying to answer that question, and last spring he put forward a figure that, for many readers, seemed to shut the debate down. He said £1.15 million flowed into Centabale in those early years, helped along by concerts, a documentary, and the late princess's name on every invitation. The focus, according to the way he framed it, was supposed to be orphans in southern Africa affected by AIDS. Yet only 84,000 reportedly reached them. That is 84,000 out of 1.15 million. I ran those numbers twice myself because it felt like I had missed a decimal point somewhere. That works out to around 7%, or about 7 pence on the pound, going to a young person living with HIV. And, according to that account, a significant part of the rest went toward a 4-bedroom villa, staff, and private school fees for 3 young people, not the orphans' children. That gap is exactly why the online chatter kept growing, because once people saw those numbers, they stopped talking about a single awkward moment and started questioning the bigger picture. For critics, it was never just about one gala or one clipped exchange. It was about whether the surrounding public image matched what supporters had been led to expect. For others, the whole thing still looked like a messy dispute that got amplified far beyond the original scene. And that is where the tension really sits, in the space between what was shown publicly and what people think happened behind the scenes. A short clip, a few sharp words, and a handful of disputed claims were enough to keep the conversation moving for days, then weeks. Online, every detail got pulled apart, with some viewers treating it like proof of a pattern and others saying the reaction was getting ahead of the facts. Either way, the story did not stay small. It kept widening, because once a public appearance becomes tied to questions about money, charity, and control, people tend to read everything else through that lens. And that is what made this moment so hard to shake.
Harry is pretty unintelligent. He's very uneducated. His interests are very limited. Emotionally, he is more unstable than his father. And I don't think he is able to rationally work out his own position in this world.
The directors. And Bauer's account of the years that followed is even more striking. He said Harry simply stopped going and did not return to that part of Africa for something like 5 years. In his telling, the reason was as blunt as it was controversial. Meghan supposedly did not like Africa. That was the explanation he put forward, and if that version is accurate, then the young people in Lesotho went 5 years without the man whose face was still being used in the fundraising. It is the kind of detail that kept online debate going, because for critics, it raised even more questions about who was really showing up for the cause.
Meghan Markle, as usual, is asking for insane demands. And again, she made it all about herself. But she doesn't care, does she? What else can we expect from Meghan Markle? You will see that the body language is brutal. There is no eye contact whatsoever. And Harry, of course, knew that he messed up, that he should have moved along. But did he? No, because he's a coward. He's a coward, and he knows that people will always forgive him, especially now after he met with the king.
According to Bauer's account, he had simply grown tired of it, tired of the polo, tired of showing up for the cameras to help bring in the money. And when Chandaka tried to steady the situation, Bauer claimed he did everything he could to undermine her. The harshest line Bauer lands on is maybe the coldest criticism anyone has made about him. Harry, he says, is more focused on his reputation than on the people who are supposed to benefit from the charity. In that telling, the real people affected are the Africans, and when it comes to their own foundation, his verdict is blunt. He argues it is not really a charity at all. It's a commercial organization. Bezos gives away hundreds of millions, he says. They give away only a few thousand. A few thousand. The audacity of it.
But he is prepared to put that ahead of not just his own charity, but of charities altogether, because this commission says the damage being done from Harry here could actually stop people trusting charities altogether. His mother would be ashamed.
And then placing that next to the woman they never stop bringing up, as Bauer does, makes it feel like the sharpest part of his entire argument. It is probably the most unforgiving comparison in the whole thing. Diana, say what you want about her. People did for years, but she worked. Bauer's own description is that she had incredible status, that she looked beautiful, that she carried herself with real poise, and that she worked extremely hard at being a royal. He also says she was genuinely empathetic with a great many sick people, day after day, in hospices, hospitals, and AIDS wards in 1987, when a lot of Fleet Street still acted as if you could catch it from a handshake. Then she took her gloves off, held a dying man's hand in front of the cameras, and, according to that public impact, some people believe she helped change how an entire country thought about the disease. That is the job when somebody truly means it. That contrast is what keeps the conversation so charged, because people are not just reacting to one charity dispute, they are reacting to two very different images of what public service is supposed to look like. On one side, there is the polished branding, the private tension, and the claims that keep circling online. On the other, there is the memory of someone whose work, at least in the public mind, seemed to come with real presence and consistency. And that is why every new comment gets dissected so closely. Once a story starts pulling in questions about image, generosity, and who actually does the work, the discussion stops being about a single appearance and starts turning into a much bigger judgment about character. Supporters push back, critics sharpen their case, and the disputed details keep getting recycled as people try to decide what matters most. So the online reaction is not just noise. It is part of the story itself, because the audience is no longer watching a clean headline, they are watching a larger argument about credibility, effort, and how public acts are remembered. And with that kind of pressure building, even a short clip can end up carrying far more weight than anyone expected.
In Meghan's mind, she is Diana.
Yes.
I mean, Diana Spencer is Meghan Spencer. And that was all part of her imagination that somehow she could inherit the glow of her dead mother-in-law. So I think that was another reason for Charles to say no.
Now Bauer turns his attention to the daughter-in-law, who has spent years wearing that woman's jewelry. In his telling, Meghan, he says, would never choose to spend day after day in hospices, hospitals, or around people living in poverty. He claims she was more interested in parties and high-profile moments, even mentioning Elton John and time in the south of France. Read that again, because that is the comparison he is making. In that framing, one person was sitting with the dying, while the other was showing up where the cameras, luxury settings, and borrowed jewels could do most of the talking, then calling it a legacy.
What Meghan never really understood, probably not even now, is that when she was cheered as a working royal, it wasn't because she was Meghan Markle, it was because she represented British royalty and all the values of the Queen and all the tradition and 1,000 years of history.
Some critics go even further, arguing that she has taken one of the most powerful humanitarian images of the last 50 years, that moment of that woman in the ward holding that hand, and stripped it of its meaning, wearing it to a gala like a costume.
I think that's the whole issue, that they were globally, and they are globally known, but because of the way they behaved in the last 4 or 5 years, and as the price of betrayal, their reputation and their status and their fortunes are crumbling.
Which brings us to what Bauer presents as the more candid reason those two are in Victoria at all. In that telling, they are not getting the invitations anymore. No Met Gala, no big award nights, none of the rooms they seem to believe should still be open to them. According to his comments, Hollywood has gone quiet, and this summer he was asked where the pair of them had ended up. He answered in 2 words, desperation and failure. They've run out of ideas, he said, adding that the finances are in jeopardy. He also described the two of them as effectively having to return to Britain on bended knees, supposedly grateful if the king agrees to see them. When it came to her, he sounded even more severe. In his view, there is no real income left, the Netflix chapter is over, the podcast's success never fully materialized, and he does not see an obvious next move. She is, in his words, finished. And that is exactly why the reaction keeps getting louder online, because once a public figure is framed this harshly, every small detail starts to carry extra weight. People are not only judging the words being used, they are judging the bigger picture that those words are trying to create. Supporters say the criticism goes too far, while critics argue the pattern speaks for itself, even if the claims remain disputed and heavily debated. At that point, the story stops being about one appearance or one interview and turns into a wider argument about image, access, and how much public goodwill is left. That is what makes the conversation so sticky, because each new comment seems to reopen the same questions instead of closing them. And as the commentary keeps moving from one claim to the next, the tension only builds, with people online reading every line as another sign of where this is all headed.
In some ways, he does despise his wife. I mean, we saw that on the recent Middle Eastern tour, when he was constantly rejecting her attempt at public displays of affection because he knows that what she's doing is like ownership. It's not about love, it's not about affection, it's about ownership, and it's about showing the world who is in control, and he can't stand that.
So a Canadian charity gala on an island most of Hollywood would probably struggle to place on a map gets a yes. Of course it does. And even that choice came with its own little sting. The claim circulating out of Canada is that the foundation covered the entire trip, flights, hotel, everything. That part stays in the realm of whispers, and it should. But here is what is not a whisper. 2 days later, not one newspaper anywhere seems to have asked whether they paid for those $5,000 seats, whether they bid on a single item, or whether they gave even $1 of their own. Nobody asked. Make of that what you will. Then Saturday arrived, and Saturday says a lot.
It doesn't work for you to shoulders back, breasts out, headlights going, and try to look as bitchy as possible.
There was also a second event, free and open to the public, where thousands of everyday Victoria families gathered down by the harbor for a drone show, fireworks, and 40 years of one man's work being handed back to the town that shaped it. No carpet, no rope line, no photographers barked in at the entrance, not a single photo of them, no report, no sighting, and not even a word on their own social media. A whole weekend in that city, and the only part either of them seemed to show up for was the part with cameras already pointed at it. And all the while, that same province was dealing with a serious wildfire crisis. More than 20,000 Canadians had been forced from their homes, British Columbia had declared a state of emergency, and, according to online discussion, a duchess with the world's press at her fingertips was holding a phone in her hand. 20,000 people and not one public word.
They are photoshopping, editing, putting a lot of filters on Meghan Markle's pictures. This picture was taken by a bystander or whoever was there behind the scenes backstage. And of course, you can see all the wrinkles here. It was pretty dark, the picture, so I had to make it brighter. That's all I did. But you can see Meghan Markle's disheveled hair. She has a bun. She has like a bunch of hair sticking out. You can see the wrinkles on her face. And look at that armpit. She would have the resources. If you're going to wear a bun, make sure that you put some Vaseline or something there, but she do not look nice.
So what did the public really get from the whole weekend? A selfie. One short video of a dessert, plus a little laugh in a hallway, posted the next morning to millions of viewers and tagged only with a Canadian flag and a red heart, with not a single word more. Nothing about the foundation, nothing about the cause, nothing about the families, the 14.5 million raised, not a mention of the young person waiting on a transplant, and not even a nod to the 20,000 people packing up their cars. Just a flag and a heart. Then people started looking more closely at the post itself, and that is where online chatter really took off, because some viewers noticed what they thought was the most awkward detail of all. Her own brand had liked her own picture, her company showing support on her own page. It is the kind of thing people online immediately latch onto, and once they saw it, they could not stop talking about it. And that is why the backlash keeps sticking, because once people think they have spotted a pattern, every small move starts to feel bigger than it probably is. To supporters, it is just another example of people overanalyzing a harmless post. To critics, it looks like the kind of self-aware image control that only adds more questions instead of calming things down. Online, the discussion quickly shifted from the post itself to what it seemed to represent, a polished moment without much substance behind it. That is where the frustration really grows, because viewers are not only reacting to one picture, they are reacting to the gap between the public image and the reaction it tends to spark. And once that gap opens up, everything else gets pulled into it, the charity angle, the silence around the bigger cause, and the way people online keep revisiting the same uncomfortable questions. When nothing new is raised questions about, the commentary keeps circling back, because the lack of a clear, direct response leaves room for more speculation, not less.
It is unbelievable to me that Harry has been so blinded by this woman, and he is not even putting his mother's legacy before, his wife and the things that she's doing that are so detrimental to this good work.
That one tap said a lot, and it cost nothing. It looked like there was no crowd in her head, just a mirror, and when the reflection did not seem to applaud fast enough, her other account stepped in to do the cheering. She stepped onto that carpet acting like she was there to run the evening, but 90 seconds later, a man who has spent decades around famous names appeared to move right past her, took his place, and left her adjusting her dress in front of a packed room. She came in to direct, but the moment shifted fast, and the only person who caught it on camera was the young woman she had hired. See you on the next one.